For years, my parents just laughed at my construction job. Now, I make more than both of them combined, and I've completely cut them out of my will. I'm a 34-year-old guy who owns a construction company here in Phoenix. We specialize in high-end backyard makeovers. Think custom pools, outdoor kitchens, fancy fire pits, and all that good stuff. Most people don't get how tough it was to build this business. I started with just myself, a beat-up old truck, and maxed-out credit cards. I took any gig I could get: deck repairs, fence installs, patching concrete. I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week. My hands were permanently stained with concrete dust, and my back felt like it was held together with duct tape. To save on gas money, I'd sleep in my truck at job sites during the week. My bedroom was the cab of a 2008 Ford F-150 with 173,000 miles, and a heater that only worked half the time. Arizona winter nights aren't as nice as they sound when you're sleeping in a metal box. I even lost my apartment after a client stiffed me on a $12,000 patio project. The guy complained the stonework didn't match the photo, even though the contract clearly said natural stone varies in color. That was an expensive lesson about payment plans and deposits. A lawyer wanted $5,000 just to start the process, which I didn't have. My first big break came when I landed a small pool installation for a retired couple. Before that, my portfolio was just phone pictures of decks and patios. They took a chance on me because their grandson played on the same high school football team as I did. Family connections might get your foot in the door, but you still have to deliver. They recommended me to their neighbor, who then sent me to their son. That's networking 101. I hired my first employee, Diego, who's still with us today. I found him working as a day laborer outside Home Depot. He had more skill than half the contractors I'd ever met. All he needed was his papers and a real opportunity. I personally paid for his certification classes. Best investment I've ever made. Then the supply chain went crazy and almost killed us. Lumber prices shot up overnight. I had to explain to clients why their quotes suddenly jumped 40%. We lost half our projects. I started chasing supplies like it was a competitive sport, driving to suppliers at 4:30 a.m. to be first in line, calling in favors from guys I'd helped out. We even traded materials with other contractors to make sure none of us went under. One week, I drove 1,200 miles across Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico just to find specific tiles a client insisted on. I probably slept about 20 hours that entire week. The client had no idea. To them, it was simply on time. A local news anchor hired us for a small job and then did a report on it. Our Instagram followers tripled in a week. That's when we started, focusing exclusively on high-end projects. I turned down a $50,000 renovation in favor of a $120,000 custom build that would really make us stand out. It was a risky move, but playing it safe wasn't going to get me out of that truck. The renovation client who I passed on actually cursed me out, but then came back later offering double my original quote. Now we have 20 employees, 3 crews, working simultaneously in a 3-month waiting list. The last quarter, we finished $430,000 in projects with a 22% profit margin, our best quarter ever. By Phoenix contractor standards, that's the major leagues. I don't drive a Lamborghini or post pictures of Rolexes. My flexibility is our efficiency. Every foreman has a company card with spending limits that I track in real time. Be upgraded to builder trend for client quotes, change orders, and project schedules. All in one dashboard, cutting our admin time by almost half. I fired a guy who showed up twice smelling like vape juice and making excuses. I explained to the crew exactly why. If someone can't show up on time, sober, and prepared, they're not just hurting themselves, they're risking all our paychecks. That's not drama, that's policy. Every dime in my account was earned by working harder than anyone else. No handouts, no family loans, no help. This is a big deal because my family still treats me like I'm some broke teenager, not someone who makes more than both my parents put together. I met Sophie, an interior designer working with us on the outdoor kitchen, finishing at one of those high-end projects. She's incredibly smart, beautiful, and refreshingly direct. No games, no playing hard to get. She called me about granite samples and just said, "You free on Friday? I know a place with decent tacos." She grew up with her grandma, parents, left when she was 8, She went to design school while taking care of her grandmother who had dementia. This woman knows what real struggle looks like. When we first started dating, she'd occasionally stop by job sites with coffee for the entire crew, not just me. That's how I knew she was different. She respected the work itself, not just the finished product. Quick family rundown, my dad. Frank manages a grocery chain district and makes about $85,000. My mom. Linda is an elementary school administrator. Sister Chelsea claims to be a marketing consultant but hasn't worked with a real client in years. She lives in my parents' basement and pretends to run a business empire through her Instagram account. She left her room exactly as it was, complete with high school participation awards and boy band posters. She just added a ring light and a girl boss sign for her daily motivational videos, which get about 12 views. Growing up, the family dynamic was always clear. Chelsea could do no wrong, and I could do no right. They called her decision to drop out of college and travel to Europe brave self-discovery. When I worked construction over the summers to pay for business school, they called it settling for manual labor. My dad would walk through our job sites, pointing out errors that were essentially incomplete work. He still does it. He went to the $300,000 lake house project we were working on and told the homeowner right in front of me that the slope on the deck looked odd. It wasn't. We're in the middle of laser leveling the supports. The homeowner was hesitant until I showed him the designs and equipment. My mom wasn't any better. When I made the dean's list in business school for 3 semesters in a row, she commented, "If only you had applied yourself like this in high school." During college, I worked 30 hours a week. In high school, I worked 15 hours a week while still playing sports. Chelsea has been a disaster from day one. She declared she was going plant-based the moment Mom put the turkey on the table. She made a show of eating only side dishes and gagging any time someone sliced into the meat. This is the same Chelsea I saw devour a bacon cheeseburger the week before. When I commented, "Funny how your plant-based diet includes those leather boots you bought last week," she hurled cranberry sauce at me. I just brushed it off and kept eating while everyone pretended not to notice. Another time, at my cousin's wedding, she cornered me to explain how my company was harming the environment because concrete manufacturing emits carbon dioxide. This from someone who takes 40-minute showers and leaves every light on in the house. I asked how much she enjoyed driving her SUV to the salon for her monthly blowout. She didn't talk to me for months. It's the most peaceful months of my life. The hypocrisy is what gets me. She preaches about sustainability, but buys fast fashion every week. Talks about economic disparity, but hasn't had a real job in years. Posts about hustle culture while sleeping until noon every day. Sophie first met my family at Christmas last year. Chelsea showed up with some tiny dude in a turtleneck whom she introduced as her business partner. They spent the entire dinner discussing their new wellness platform, which promised to disrupt the mindfulness space. The software supposedly merged meditation, Bitcoin, and social media. The startup equivalent of throwing random buzzwords into a blender. When I asked basic questions about revenue models or user acquisition costs, she got defensive and said, "Not everything is about money." I laughed and said, "It's hard to make a difference from Mom's basement." Dad nearly choked on his water. After dinner, Chelsea cornered Sophie in the kitchen while I was getting drinks. When I walked in, Chelsea was saying something about Logan's building phase not lasting long, and Sophie needing a backup plan in case everything falls apart. Sophie just grinned and replied, "Actually, I've seen his financials. Maybe you should ask him for investment advice instead of whatever that turtleneck guy is selling you." Chelsea stormed off, and Sophie just smirked at me. That's my girl. I've always hated family reunions, but skipping them leads to weeks of texts about how important I am now. So, I show up, keep my head down, and count the minutes until I can leave. I called Dad to ask about plans. His tone was unusually casual. "We're just doing a small thing this year. Mother wants to keep it low-key." I figured it meant the usual meal at their house, maybe some flowers. "Nothing special." Before hanging up, he said, "Don't bother coming this time. No need for gifts either. Oh, just focus on your business. The drive from Phoenix is a pain in the butt." I had a fleeting sense of relief. Maybe they finally realized I was building something legitimate, but years of family dynamics had taught me to be wary. I was having beers with my friend Derek at our usual spot. We met in business school, and now he owns his own plumbing company. We talked about supplier issues, managing employees, and expansion strategies. Real business stuff, not Instagram follower counts. Derek seemed skeptical when I told him about my father's call. Sounds like a trap. If you don't show up, you've skipped Mother's Day. If you do show, they'll think you're imposing. Sophie, who joined us after finishing with a client, agreed. Your sister has been posting all week about a major Mother's Day surprise. Sophie follows Chelsea on social media just to gather intel. She compares it to tracking a highly unpredictable weather system. Derek's comments stuck with me. I needed an irresistible gift. Then I remembered a conversation from years ago. Mom had mentioned wanting to go to Skyrock, a fancy wellness center near Sedona, saying it was her dream getaway, but too expensive. Dad just laughed it off. Maybe when we win the lottery. The next morning at work, I looked up Skyrock Sedona. They offered a rejuvenation weekend package, 3 days and 2 nights of spa treatments, guided meditation, hiking, and all meals included. $3,800 for 2 people. Years ago, that amount would have been my entire emergency savings. Nowadays, I can write a check without blinking. Business was good. We had just completed a $230,000 backyard project for a tech executive, which came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The client had already referred friends. I booked the package for the weekend after Mother's Day. I put down my parents' names and paid in full. They even arranged for champagne in their suite. For once, I was actually looking forward to a family gathering. Should have known better. Sophie and I drove 2 hours from Phoenix to Tucson on Sunday morning. I told Diego I'd be unavailable all day, which was unusual since I normally take client calls 7 days a week. As soon as I turned onto my parents' street, I knew something was wrong. Both sides were lined with cars. I counted at least 15 vehicles, including my aunt's Range Rover and my uncle's ridiculous Hummer, which he bought for off-roading, but has never left a paved road in its life. I found a spot 3 houses down and walked up with the package holding the retreat reservations. Sophie was by my side, looking stunning in a simple blue dress. She squeezed my hand, sensing my stress. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in and followed the noise to the backyard. As I got closer to the patio doors, I heard my uncle say, "I thought Logan wasn't coming today." My father then continued he said he couldn't make it, probably for the best. That jerk would just bring down the mood with his contractor stories. At least we have Chelsea here showing us her new presentation. I froze, hiding behind the door frame. Sophie tightened her grip on my hand. The backyard had been completely redone. Tables were covered with extravagant flower arrangements. Happy Mother's Day, Linda banner hung, and catering staff were preparing what looked like a gourmet dinner. At least 30 people were gathered on the professionally landscaped patio. I had offered to remodel for free, but they declined because your sister's friend knows a guy. My cousin Jared noticed me first. "Holy cow, Logan is here." "Welcome, brother." Everyone's head turned. My father quickly recovered with a dismissive, "just joking around, son," before turning away to chat with my uncle, as if I weren't even there. When I stepped into the backyard, the whispers started instantly. Comments about showing up empty-handed, still driving the same truck, and how Chelsea recently got a huge investment for her software. I heard statements like, "must not be doing as well as he claims, and still has dirt under his fingernails." The last one was true. I'd been helping a crew with some masonry the day before because one of the guys called in sick. The owner still gets his hands dirty when needed. Imagine that. I saw Chelsea holding court near the bar, wearing huge designer sunglasses and gesturing to a group of relatives. When she saw me, she sneered and muttered something to our cousin, who laughed. Then her gaze fell on Sophie and quickly rolled. I approached Mom at the main table. She frowned and asked, "Why didn't you call about coming?" Then she stared at my hands. "You didn't even bring anything for your mother." "Wow, very classy." She then turned to Sophie with a fake smile. "And you've brought your girlfriend. How nice." "Did you know it's a family event?" Sophie just smiled. "Back. I'm his fiancé, actually. We got engaged last month." She held up her left hand, showing the diamond I'd proposed with, after landing our biggest deal yet. "I guess our announcement got lost in the mail," just like our invitation. I started reaching for the envelope in my pocket, but then I stopped. The setup was clear. This wasn't a last-minute gathering. This was a planned event that I was purposefully excluded from. Suddenly, Chelsea's business partner, Travis, approached in another ridiculous turtleneck, despite the 85-degree heat. He looked like a Silicon Valley caricature playing dress-up, complete with those $400 minimalist sneakers that look like hospital shoes. He made a sarcastic remark about my construction job, asking if I'd considered getting into tech because that's where the real money is. This from a guy who has yet to ship a viable product. I casually mentioned that we had just finished a project for his company's CFO, who had rejected their app investment. Hey, nice guy. Brad said something about your pitch deck's ridiculous. Projections. Small world. Travis's smug look faded, and Chelsea's gaze narrowed. I found an empty chair near my cousin Jared and headed for it, Sophie by my side. Jared has always treated me well. He's a firefighter who hates BS as much as I do. Just as I was about to sit, Chelsea reappeared, telling me that Travis's seat was available and that I could get a foldable chair from the garage. She looked at Sophie and said, "And I'm not sure where your +1 should sit. We didn't plan for extras." Jared stood up instantly. "I'll help you," he offered, following me inside. As we walked to the garage, he said quietly, "What the hell, man? Dad claimed it was supposed to be small. Then Aunt Linda called and said it was all about catering. Every time I asked who was coming, she changed the subject. Now I get it, apparently." "I didn't make the cut," I explained, grabbing 2 metal folding chairs. We returned to the yard and set up at the edge of the patio. Instead of returning to his table, Jared pulled his chair up next to me, a small gesture that meant more than he imagined. Dad clinked his glass to get everyone's attention, stated that it was time to celebrate our beautiful Linda, and invited everyone to a catered lunch. After the obligatory song and photos, everybody gathered around the catering table. I was ready to join when Dad exclaimed, "Logan, we didn't include you in the caterer's head count. Just get a drink or something." The entire backyard went silent. I looked at my father, trying to process what he had just said. "What are you kidding me right now?" The words came out naturally. Said language, Logan, and yeah, I am not kidding. We spent $35 per person for this meal, and you were not on the list. I looked around. Some people had uncomfortable expressions. Others clearly enjoyed the show, and most became very interested in their drinks. Psst. Then Mom stood up and straightened her blouse. "We told Logan not to come today. He chose to disregard it. We can't just make food appear." Jared spoke up. "Mrs. D. Logan, you are welcome to share my plate. I won't eat much anyway." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "No, he showed up uninvited. He can wait until everyone else has finished eating." "There's anything left?" I asked. "Since when do I need an invitation to see my mother on Mother's Day?" "You want me to wait until everyone is done, as if I were a stray dog?" Sophie chimed in. "So, just to be clear, you are telling your own son that he won't be able to eat at your family gathering because you didn't budget for him." Chelsea stepped in and attacked. "No one asked for your opinion. You don't even belong here, so keep your mouth shut." I pointed to her. "Watch your freaking mouth. You don't get to talk to her like that." "Neither does Logan, apparently," Sophie replied. He turned to me and said, "Babe, we can get lunch on the way home. This isn't worth it." That was it. Something inside me just snapped. It's not in a rage, but in a very clear way. Imagine staring at a difficult blueprint and suddenly seeing the solution. "Just so you all know, I actually did bring something." I took an envelope from my pocket and handed it to Jared. "Will you open it for me, bro?" He looked confused and gently opened the envelope. His eyes widened when he saw the reservation. Confirmation. At my request, he read it aloud. "Sky Rock Wellness Retreat, Sedona. Premium rejuvenation package for 2 nights. 2 nights in a Mountain View suite. All meals, spa treatments, and activities included. Guests, Frank and Linda. Total value, $3,800, paid in full." "Holy cow, Logan," he said. Everyone went silent. Several family members started checking their phones to confirm the pricing. Aunt Marlene was now scanning through the Skyrock website, her eyes widening at the images. Could have heard a pin drop. Mom's jaw actually dropped open. Then they tried to backtrack. "Logan, We didn't know, Mom stated firmly. Look, we were joking around, Dad explained. You know how family is. Sit down, have some food. I remained standing. That package includes couples, massages, guided meditation, hikes, and a private dinner on the terrace overlooking the mountains. Everything Mom mentioned wanting to do someday when you had the money. Travis tried to interject. Linda, sometimes. The universe works in mysterious ways. Perhaps this retreat could be... double quotes, shut up, Travis, several people said at once. I turned back to Jared. Those reservations are in my parents' names, but they can be transferred. I'd like you and Emily to have them? Jared was astonished, stating this was meant for my parents. His face said $3,800 more clearly than any words could. Not anymore, I stated firmly. My parents made it crystal clear today where I stand in this family. Dad stepped forward, his face flushed. You can't do that. Those are our reservations. Actually, they're my reservations. I paid for them, and I can give them to whoever I want. I turned to Jared. You and Emily haven't had a vacation since the twins were born, right? Logan, please, Mom asked, her voice unexpectedly soft. We were just surprised to see you. You know we love you. We can all talk about this later as a family, I laughed. Yeah, sure. I promised Jared that I would call Skyrock the next day to switch the names on the reservation and send him the info. You're making a scene, Chelsea muttered, staring around at the shocked relatives. No, you all made the scene, I said. I'm just finally walking off the set. As I approached the gate to leave Sophie by my side, my cousin Rachel called out that she was joining us. Rachel is Chelsea's younger sister who moved to Colorado for a developer job. When I told her she didn't have to leave, she protested, adding, "What they did was completely messed up, and I've been watching this nonsense for years." Someone finally said it, she mumbled, grabbing her jacket. I've been biting my tongue. Since 2015, Jared joined us and returned the envelope, telling us to keep it safe until tomorrow. He was already texting Emily about the unexpected plans. To my surprise, my Uncle Ben, my father's younger brother, who moved to Alaska and became the family's black sheep, was leaning against my truck. He'd flown down for the occasion, hoping things had improved in the past 10 years. One look at the situation revealed they hadn't. Some things never change, he remarked, clapping my shoulder. I was about to make my exit, too. Mind if I join? The 5 of us ended up at a local sports bar, ordering tons of food and swapping family war stories. After cutting off communication with his family, Uncle Ben built a profitable fishing charter business in Alaska. Rachel was crushing it as a software developer. Jared, while happy as a firefighter, was dealing with his own family issues. Between bites of a burger that tasted 10 times better than any catered food, Uncle Ben recounted how my parents had always prioritized image over truth. I'd rather have a prestigious daughter who is actually broke than a successful son in a blue-collar profession. Your dad wanted to be an architect, but couldn't hack the math, he told me. So he manages grocery stores, but pretends he's an executive. Your success reminds him of what he couldn't achieve. Rachel then stated that Chelsea hasn't had a real client in over a year. She lived in their basement making fake business calls. All day, and occasionally talking to herself with no one on the other end. She drove for DoorDash 3 times a week while telling everyone she was networking with executives. Last month, she asked me to pretend to be a Silicon Valley investor on a Zoom call. Rachel told me she wanted me to speak with a British accent for some reason. I refused, so she got mad and blocked me for a week. That explained why they were so bothered by my achievement. Their golden child was failing, but I was excelling, and they refused to acknowledge it. It was easier to keep pretending, even when the evidence was right in front of them. Sophie added that Chelsea DM'd her last month asking if we needed a brand ambassador due to her strong social media presence. This came just a week after she ranted on Instagram Live about capitalism exploiting creatives. Sophie didn't respond. Sophie's previous post received 8 likes, including one from a NFT bot, proposing investment synergy. Sophie showed me the message and I laughed. You don't hire the person who lit your truck on fire just because you're low on gas? She didn't respond. I guess she couldn't find the right filter for that. I almost choked on my water. Chelsea. who had been bashing my business for years, secretly wanted to work with me. The irony was just beautiful. Jared recalled Emily's gallbladder operation while they were behind on their mortgage due to medical expenses. Someone anonymously paid for it, and they've always wondered who it was. I tried to change the subject, but Jared persisted. Finally, I shrugged and added, "You guys fed us every night for a week after I hurt my ankle on the construction site." Emily watched my dog when I flew to the supplier conference. "What goes around comes around, man," Jared explained. "And today they wouldn't even let you eat." We discussed my next steps. "Full cutoff," Uncle Ben agreed, claiming it was the best decision he'd ever made. "The first year is tough, but after that comes freedom," he told me. "They will try everything. Guilt trips, health concerns, financial emergencies. Stay strong. Your true family is sitting around this table." Rachel invited Sophie and me to her housewarming party in Denver, promising to introduce us to people who aren't complete narcissists. "Plus, we can go mountain biking if you're into that," she told me. "There's more to life than family drama." For the first time that day, I felt a sense of peace. The fallout was immediate. By the time we returned to Phoenix that night, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I ignored them all and slept the best sleep I'd had in years. First thing, Monday morning, I called Emma, my attorney. We met when I needed contracts drafted for my business, and she has since handled a number of legal issues. I asked her to add a nuclear option to my will and company succession plan, a no-blood clause that explicitly barred my parents and sister from any inheritance or business stake, regardless of circumstances. When she mentioned that this was quite definitive, I simply said, "Recent events have clarified my priorities." "Families are complicated," she added, not asking for specifics. This is why I like Emma. No needless questions, just efficient solutions. I signed the papers. My inheritance would be divided among reliable employees like Diego, a scholarship fund for trade school students, and close relatives like Jared, Rachel, and Uncle Ben. My parents and Chelsea were specifically excluded, with texts suggesting that any attempt to contest would result in a penalty provision directing monies to charities they disliked. Emma proposed environmental concerns, recognizing my sister's hypocrisy over her carbon footprint. Next, I called Skyrock to transfer the reservation to Jared and Emily. Then, I blocked my parents' and Chelsea's numbers and returned to work. Business was thriving. We received a contract to create a unique pool and outdoor kitchen for a local news anchor. In the same week, I promoted Diego to operations director and offered him a 15% raise. He had earned it by stepping up during the chaos and keeping jobs on track while I dealt with personal issues. That's what real loyalty looks like. They arrived. At my office without an appointment, Laura, our receptionist, buzzed me. "Frank, Linda, and Chelsea are here to see you. There's no appointment. They say it's essential family business." I told her to send them back. Might as well rip off the bandage. When they walked in, they didn't resemble the confident people from Mother's Day. Mom seemed tired. Dad's posture was sagging, and even Chelsea looked disheveled. The fancy dress was gone, replaced by what appeared to be regular business casual clothes. I realized I was looking at a loan request. Dad nervously complimented my office space as he looked around at the modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking downtown. "Really professional setup," he exclaimed as if shocked. "Are those awards real?" He pointed to the wall of industry honors. "No, Father. I bought fake prizes to impress clients," I explained dryly. "What do you want? Is that how you greet your family?" Mom asked. "We haven't heard from you in weeks." I cut right to the chase and asked what they wanted. Mom claimed they were concerned about me, but I quickly pointed out they came because they wanted something. Chelsea mentioned the familial drama. Aunt Karen wasn't speaking with Dad. Rachel had blocked Mom online, and Uncle Ben had sent everyone an email describing them as hazardous. I grinned and responded, "That sounds like your problem, not mine." Dad tried an apology, describing their behavior as inappropriate. I stated that telling someone they can't eat at a family gathering or calling them a loser in front of everyone is completely improper. That was a momentary lapse in judgment. He remarked as if he were describing failing to signal a lane change after a lot of back and forth. Dad finally revealed that they needed about $25,000 due to financial troubles. That was the real reason for their visit. Not an apology, but a financial request. The pieces snapped into place instantly. When I asked what the money was for, they paused before Dad revealed it was for Chelsea's wellness app. They had invested their savings as seed money. The developer needed an additional $25,000 to complete the platform. I smiled and correctly guessed that the first $30,000 was spent on a fancy logo, professional Instagram photo shoots, and gold foil business cards, rather than actual software development. Let me guess, Travis's relative works part-time as a WordPress developer? I asked. Chelsea's look confirmed that without words. Amateurs. There are so many of them. I stated that Travis was deceiving them and that they had mortgaged their retirement to pay for Chelsea's vanity project without asking a single probing question. I could have introduced you to legitimate developers who would have built a working prototype for $5,000 before you committed another dime, told them. But you never asked for my expertise, because to you, I'm just the guy who plays with dirt for a living. Heck, for $25,000. I could have hired 2 junior devs and a UI guy off Upwork to build a working MVP with integrated analytics and a feedback loop. Instead, they blew it on logo design, gold foil cards, and paid a vegan TikTok girl to promote it. She removed the video after 36 hours. There are 0 users, no feedback, no product, but at the very least the app had a vibe. When Mom inquired if I wouldn't help them, I told her that if they had treated me with basic decency, I would have helped without hesitation. I had helped staff during difficult times. I paid for Diego's son's emergency operation without a second thought. But those were the very last individuals I would give money to. It's not about the money, I clarified. I made more than your loan amount last month in profit. It's about the pattern of behavior that led us here. Mom mumbled something about family, which I firmly corrected. We share DNA, but that's not the same thing as family. I stood up and remarked that Jared and Emily had a great time at Skyrock. I showed them the pictures they had sent, including one of them raising glasses on the Mountain View terrace, which should have been my parents. Dad became enraged, exclaiming, "That's it? Years of raising you, and you just cut us off? You raised me to be self-sufficient," I told them. Congratulations, it worked. Chelsea tried one more time, claiming she had a job offer in Chicago and needed $3,000 for an apartment security deposit. I merely complimented her and advised her to contact a bank for a loan. "Banks require income verification," she mumbled. "So do I said. Mom made one final plea, claiming they recognized they had made a mistake and wanted a second chance. I offered to email them the name of a financial expert who helps people restructure debt and promised to pay for the initial appointment. That was it. Dad complained that wasn't enough. I said calmly, "It was more than you deserved." I then requested them to leave. "If you ever want a real relationship based on mutual respect rather than what I can do for you, the door remains open," I told them, "but it'll be on entirely new terms." Diego checked on me after they had left. I told him I was doing better than excellent and asked about his house hunting progress. I had brought up the challenging market. I offered a friends and family discount on renovations to help make a fixer-upper more affordable. "Are you sure you want to mix business with friendship?" he asked. "You're not a friend," I responded. "You're family." Months have passed. My parents occasionally try to contact me through other relatives, but I have made my stance clear. Instead of the family I was born into, I've created something better, a community of people who genuinely value one another. Last weekend I flew to Denver. To celebrate Rachel's housewarming, Uncle Ben traveled down from Alaska. Jared and Emily drove up from Tucson. Sophie and I finalized our wedding plans while we were there. The event will take place next month at a site overlooking Camelback Mountain. We have already decided that my parents and sister will not be invited. My company recently broke ground on our most ambitious project yet, a total backyard remodel for a former NFL player that will be featured in a home magazine. We're opening a second location next quarter, and I'm bringing on Diego as a junior partner. He almost broke down when I told him. He said he never expected to be operating a business in America when he crossed the border a decade ago. As for my parents and Chelsea, I learned via Jared that Dad's wellness app investment has been depleted. The developer vanished with the money. Chelsea's job offer inexplicably fell through. They are telling everyone that I abandoned the family in their time of need. But here's the thing. For the first time in my life, I don't care what others say about me. I'm too busy making something genuine, which it turns out is pretty important. Sophie and I will marry next weekend after the dust has settled. We're keeping it small, just for those who genuinely support us. Uncle Ben is officiating. Diego is my best man. Rachel is helping to keep everything in order. Jared and Emily are bringing the twins. There's no drama, no passive-aggressive remarks. Nobody told me I couldn't eat the food at my own wedding, even had designated seats. Sophie's friend created the calligraphy cards. When one of Jared's cousins playfully inquired if Chelsea had a seat, I simply smiled and answered, didn't budget for extras. Uncle Ben almost snorted his drink. The table cracked up. It felt like justice, but quiet. We chose to celebrate something authentic with only our family.